We are kind of known here for our sometimes mediocre takes, such as, what are our famous ones? Platformers being S tier.
We agree with that being shit though.
That's a pretty bad one, honestly. Unity being A tier is also very controversial.
Very true though.
But we figured, hey, instead of all of you guys clowning on us, let's turn this around, and we asked you for your hot takes. We got a lot of them. Some of them were pretty cold, some of them were really spicy. So we're just gonna be going through them and we're going to be giving our opinion on them.
Yeah, hot take number one, your hot takes aren't as hot. You're pretty dang average, you're not being cool.
And I think the one here that got the most upvotes is that most indie games fail simply because they aren't that good, rather than marketing or some other factor the developer points at. Is this a hot take?
No.
But I think it is true. I think...
We recently did a stream where we played indie games, and honestly the games were good, but they were not great. So I don't think they sell themselves.
But on the, I think you can have a bad game and do it purely marketing. I think if you look at Playway, they make pretty objectively bad games. Like one of their recent ones is Beer Factory Simulator or something. It said at a solid 60% or something review score. Yet still it has sold more than any indie can ever dream of. So I don't think just making a good game is all that matters.
Wait, didn't they say like... Wait, whoa, I think I got the hot take wrong.
Let me get it. Most indie games fail because they aren't good, instead of being bad at marketing or some other thing that the developer points at.
I think there are a lot of hidden gems.
Such as Forge Industry.
It's hidden, but it's not a gem. But yeah, I don't know. This statement is stupid.
Okay. I think definitely having a good game is going to help, but it's not going to be the thing that decides, is the game going to succeed, yes or no?
Yeah, I think if you know what you're doing, it's a lot easier to market a bad game and succeed than to make a good game, market it badly and then succeed.
Okay, how would we rate this one? We're not putting it on a tier list.
Not putting on a tier list?
No, too much.
But if we were to put it on a tier list, what tier would it be? It's not that hot. Are we rating like on hotness?
On truthness and on hotness. I think this is like a C, yeah. Okay, this is a C take.
Imagine we have a grid right now.
Next up, people expect more polish from an indie game than from a AAA game.
No.
No?
No. What do you mean polish?
So look at, what was it's not Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but the pirate game, the quadruple A Ubisoft one that came out recently, Skull and Bones. Like, I think the games are going to have jank, whether it is indie or it's like AAA for the most part, but I feel like people still buy AAA games, whereas if it's an indie game that's janky, it's like, we're just not going to buy it. I think this is a topic that I've heard as well, of like, oh, just release a somewhat broken game, do the cyberpunk approach, and then you'll get good press even because you're gonna be the good guy because you fix up your game along the way. Don't do that.
It's a unique way.
I have heard that.
That's a pretty shit take.
It's a pretty bad approach, but I think there is a very high, especially if you look at like the amount of quality people expect for games that are like $5.
Yeah, okay, I agree. But I also disagree, because at one point, yeah, you're right. For $5, people expect the world from indie. If you think from a cost perspective, it's most likely not making you any money anytime soon, unless you sell a buttload. But on the other hand, I've seen a lot of people, at least that play a lot of indie games, be a lot more forgiving if they know it's an indie game.
But that's the thing, a lot of people don't know that there's indie games as well. Like, for example, Dave the Diver, a lot of people think it's an indie game.
It's not an indie game.
Yeah.
Shut up, you guys. It's not an indie game. It looks like an indie game, but it is not. Just like Palworld, by the way, not an indie game. If you have millions of budget, it's not indie in my opinion. Okay, it might not have a publisher, but still.
Baldur's Gate is a small indie game. But yeah, I think this is a pretty much an A-tier take. At least. I do think that people expect more polish from indies than from AAA games.
B tier, it's the best I can do. Okay. But we're not putting it in tiers anyway, so...
Next up, we have working on custom art or animations as early as the prototyping phase. Like, you're starting to make your first game and you're prototyping your game and immediately you look at getting it visually already pretty far. I think...
You're not making a prototype, you're making a vertical slice then.
I think it's the right move. I think you should do it, honestly.
But you're not making a prototype then. You're making a vertical slice.
No, vertical slice is different. The thing is, it also depends a bit on your genre, but I think for 80% of the genres, having good visuals first and then gameplay second is actually going to help you more in terms of actually selling the game. This brings us back to that first point of, oh, do you need a good game or do you just need to market?
I mean, yeah, and the benefit I see from this at least is you can get your Steam page up really early, like you should, and you can start marketing it already. That's the biggest benefit in my opinion.
It's the difference of, do I want to make a game that is a game? Or do I want to make a game that I can sell probably easier? Like, yeah, sure. We got the feedback as well of like, hey, Songs of Everjade, you should basically just have your level only be like a single room, and only once that is fun, continue working on it. But if that's the case, you're never gonna release, because only once you've done that combat and then you're only gonna start thinking about art, it's too late at that point, really. I think only if you're making like the extremely deep technical games, like Cosmo Tier, for example, then you can kind of get away with not focusing on the art too much. But I think definitely the earlier you can do art, the better. Would I go so far as to like fully get custom things commissioned or spend like a month learning Blender for making my main character? No, indeed. But things like assets and such, use them as fast as possible. And don't just have gray boxes interacting with each other.
I don't think it's a very hot take though, but I do agree. So it's like an A or something.
I think it's an A tier take.
Yeah. Good job, good take, you're not an idiot. Next up.
Unity is a Z-tier engine, but I have Stockholm syndrome. Please send help. Let's talk about Unity.
Yeah.
This was one that, like, we got so many Unity takes.
You guys.
Unity is doing bad stock-wise. I agree. Unity is currently, like, very freshly... Have you seen the latest Unity drama? That they have a special version for China that has, like, Lumen and Nanite, basically, but it's not available in the global version of Unity.
And why?
Because it's Unity made for the mobile game market. So you have ray tracing on mobile support and things like that. Only in the Unity China spin-off. They just keep getting the bad press, basically.
Okay, Unity does get bad press. And Unity definitely has its flaws. And yes, I might be biased because I've been working with Unity for a very long time, but 95% of you guys don't make enough money to bother about, to even care about the pricing changes. No. So shut up, that's not relevant. If it's not relevant for you, like, oh, what if I make millions? Then it's still cheaper than Unreal, by the way, because you can now take with the new rev share thing, it's like a lower percentage than Unreal.
But what if they go and change the licensing again? They broke the trust, Godot for life.
I mean, I agree, but honestly, if I had to pick engines again, and I couldn't pick Unity because I probably would pick Unity again, to be honest, I would probably more look into Godot than Unreal, because it's open source. But that's the only reason. Unreal is a great engine, but it's not great, at least for our studio. We don't do visually that intense tough tasks, and just working in C# is a lot easier than C++. Now someone is going to comment C++ is an easy language. Whatever, bro, but...
No, they're gonna comment you use blueprints.
But you can also use Bolt in Unity.
It's different, I found out still. But anyways, would we still put Unity as an A-tier engine, actually?
I would.
You would still?
Yeah.
I think I would do so as well. So everyone who's like, Unity F-tier, go away.
You're just biased, or you're just scared Unity's gonna screw you over, but Unity cannot screw you over anymore because legally, you just work with the version you want and they cannot do anything.
I have a hot take. I know we're gonna make a dedicated video. If you're one of those people who's like Unity's F tier, I can 100% guarantee you've never actually shipped the game.
That's you know the comments right now, right?
That's my hot take, because I think once you've actually gone through that entire process and you haven't just made, a simple platformer prototype in Godot, that is when you're gonna realize that, okay, Unity, company behind it, not the best. The engine, it is very good.
Yeah.
The only reason it's not an S tier is because their company does so many fuck-ups.
I think also one of our interns mentioned that they prefer Unity over Unreal because Unreal is like very slow and crashes all the time. No experience, don't shoot me, don't shoot the messenger.
Unity also crashes.
Unity's pretty stable for me.
I have had pretty bad experiences with it as well.
How? What do you do?
Okay, I do usually do git pulls whilst I'm like playing the game.
Oh, so you're running the game and you're like, oh, let's change the code within the game.
It crashes then. It
should keep the domain at least. Normally it doesn't change it.
It should solve it. So Unity, still good engine.
Still A tier.
Still A tier. I think you have an F tier opinion that Unity is Z tier. Yeah.
No, it's a Z tier opinion that Unity is Z tier. What is this?
Okay, this is way too long. Okay.
Summarize it.
I'm gonna summarize it. The super hot take here is Most indie game developers are not good at any other skills before they attempt making games. Why is that an issue? It's a huge amalgamation of skills. It's like programming, it's art, it's all of those things. And if you are bad at all of them, you're not going to be making good games because you're like mediocre in a lot of things, and then you have to mash those skills together, which is even harder. I think you're right.
Yeah. All indie games are talentless pieces of shit. That's not true, by the way.
That's not what the take was as well.
Oh, okay.
No, it's like, why would you, like, I get it. I wanted to get into computer science because of video games. But I first got good at regular computer science, or like decent, before we ventured into video games. I think if your first entry into programming or first entry into art is already going to be making a video game, sure, there's a pro of it's going to be more fun than just learning to program like Hello World in like C# or just making like some models that never see the light of day. But it's just so many extra things you're stacking on. It's like learning a certain skill on like ultra nightmare mode, basically, because you have to juggle 17 different skills. There's an extra layer of having to do art but with an engine, or having to program but with an engine. If you don't know how to program to begin with, you're going to have problems in terms of actually scaling your game and actually making something that's not just a whole mess of code and assets thrown together and something playable.
I also think like a decent portion, at least, of all indie game developers is just an ID guy trying his best. No offense, ID guy trying his best, but your best is not good enough most of the time.
If you want to sell it.
That's an important thing, yeah. But like, if you don't know how to program well, only know the basics, and I think we made a video about how you should learn to program and the basics you should know at least before you start a game. He will link it, it's his problem. If you are not a great artist, or not a great sound designer, you have to have something that makes you unique, because that's how you sell your game.
Not make you unique, but there should be something that stands out at least.
You're right.
Either it stands out game design wise, or code mechanics wise, or it stands out visually, but if everything is like a 5 out of 10, you're gonna end up with a 3 out of 10 game.
Yeah, the scale is not linear. You won't just keep it at the same level.
So I think this is a pretty A or S tier take, honestly.
I wouldn't call it S tier. Yeah. It's like an A or a B, so let's go A-ish.
Ooh, this is a very spicy one. 2D is easier than 3D. Or in general, X is better or easier than Y.
You're an idiot.
I wasn't even done.
Oh.
In the end, it's all about personal taste most of the times, those statements. Both of them have their own challenges. It's not that one is easier or harder than the other. It's just that you have a personal opinion on it. If you're someone who grew up playing only 2D platformer games, you're probably gonna find them much easier to make.
You have a pretty valid opinion. You're not an idiot after all, but I think it's highly dependent on the engine. Like, for example, I know Godot supports 3D games.
But this is when you're just looking at 2D versus 3D. But what about like marketing? X is easier than Y. Marketing horror is easier than automation games.
You know what we always say at our ends of the videos? Like,
thanks for watching. Go like and subscribe.
No, I mean, like, in the end, the answer is, it depends.
Yeah.
And just like here, it depends. Sometimes X is easier than Y, sure. But also the other way around. You probably find things easier that I find harder, and the other way around. But 2D is not easier than 3D.
So it's an S tier take because it got you actually angry about it.
But it's, do you agree with it?
That 2D is easier than 3D?
Yeah.
Wait, what was
Look at Songs of Everjade.
2D is easier than 3D if you look at the aspect of making a game. 2D is not easier than 3D if it comes to marketing the game.
Yeah, therefore the statement is false.
Yeah.
True and false equals false.
That specific statement is maybe false in his opinion, but I think definitely personal opinion is in the end like this channel is just our personal opinion.
Yeah.
That's why we have so many weird takes, because we just have our own biases, our own games that we grew up with. So
You can watch like 100 hours of us having
arguments. Yeah.
That's why we always start tier lists lately with these are just opinions, guys, because all of you guys hate our opinions.
Most games nowadays are uninspired. Rehashes of popular media like Star Wars, Pokemon, anime series and movies. Not an ounce of inspiration and creativity anymore. Most game devs don't draw any meaningful experiences outside of media to draw inspiration from.
How are you going to be so unique when there are like 50 million games out in the world.
No, it's different. It's just there are a lot of very wild and very weird indie games. Like I have been looking at them for like our tier lists. The problem is because they're so unique and they're so out there.
Oh, you mean too unique? I thought he said there's no variation, basically.
Most games are uninspired.
No. Uninspired. So that means no. Like always the same, right?
It's like
everyone
it's
makes
nothing.
the same game.
It's not you make the same, but it's like you make nothing new.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like
that's not the same.
it's the same.
Okay.
Hot take. No, but like uninspired because everything has already been made. Almost everything. And if you have a truly great idea, which is very rare these days, then yeah.
I think issue number one is that publishers are often publicly traded companies, and at which point shareholder investments prioritize over making good games.
But then should you take a publisher? If only there was a tier list linked right over there.
So I think if you look at that, if you look at those bigger games, yes, it's a lot of rehashes because it works, you know, it's gonna work, and it's a pretty, like, we're already in the midst of layoffs. I feel like making that wild game, sure, it may work out, but there's a very, like, you can't predict it, whereas you can predict pretty, like, you can predict that, like, FIFA games or shooter games are gonna sell. There's, like, so much psychology research backing it up and, like, older data. If you're an indie game, I think it's a bit different. I think indie games, there are some uninspired ones, but I think a lot of people have very wild ideas. I think the problem is more that in the end, they realize that their wild idea is actually quite hard to implement, and they end up watering it down to something that is more uninspired. We had wild ideas for Songs of Everjade, then we realized we weren't good enough to make them, and then we ended up with basically just a shitty version of like other roguelites. And at that point, yeah, it's like an uninspired version of Hades, but set in Chinese mythology, and you lose all of that like niceness.
Yeah, you lose the hook, and I think I said it a couple of times. You need your hook, your pillar, and your USP. The hook is important. Give me like 1 or 2 sentences why people should play your game. Palworld. People know it as Pokemon with guns. This is your hook. This is not does not like explain the entire game, but this is what gets people interesting to know more about your game. So if you don't have that, then it is pretty uninspiring. Like, why did Forge Industry, if we explain it on events to people, why did it work? Do you know Factorio? Yes, it's that without conveyor belts. And it's like, but conveyor belt is the core of the game. What do you mean? And you got people hooked. Well, Songs of Everjade is just like, it's Hades in China and worse.
Anyways, where did this take was, what is it? Most games nowadays are uninspired. I think honestly, I think it's like a C or a D tier, honestly. You're not wrong for some part, but I think there is way more to the discussion as well. It's too broad of a generalization.
It depends.
So I think it's a D tier take. Okay, next up, back to the visuals. It's far easier to make a photorealistic game than a retro-styled game, but commoners don't know that. All you need is a pile of megascans, metahumans, and a store-bought lens filter, and you too can make the next unrecord and get updated to the moon. One would call it an engine flip. I think it is easier to get those very high realism games. Like, especially now, I've been seeing more and more of them pop up of like different kinds of genre, and their whole hook is basically just, it's like hyper realistic. Is it easier to make? I think yes, in a certain way, because we've reached that point where we can pause the uncanny valley in like making like very realistic games. Like everything does look good. Whereas having those retro games, I think there is a lot of like, it looks cute and like, oh, Zelda, it's only 16 by 16 like pixels, like how hard can it be?
Then why don't we make realistic games?
Because we're using the wrong engine for it.
Okay, that's very true. If you make, yeah, true.
I think if you're making the
that's why Unity is not S tier and Unreal is, even though we use.
I mean, you can definitely make like the very realistic games in Unity, but it's harder.
Yeah, it just takes more effort.
So you're right. I think pretty much because you have so much less detail to work with that it's like you need to actually know what you're doing pixel art wise to make it look good, color wise. Whereas, you know, otherwise you just take a picture, it's like much easier to get inspiration of the real world on what to do. So I think this is a pretty A tier take.
It's a good take. It's not super hot though, I think.
Okay, then we give it a, it's maybe not.
I mean, we immediately agreed, so it's not very controversial.
Yeah, okay, it's a B tier take.
But I think you're correct at least.
Okay, next one. Programming takes less than 30% of the effort when developing a game.
Depends what kind of game you're making. What is that statement? If I make a game that's very mechanic driven, like a simulation game or a factory automation game, programming is a big part of what you're doing.
But I think if you want to make it right, you don't need more than 30%. Honestly, I think for Forge Industry, we spent like 80% on programming and that's it. And that has actually made our game worse because we didn't spend as much time on art, on marketing, on sound design, on feel.
True, but that's a mistake we made. 80% is way too much. And we only had one guy trying his best for art. So, yeah.
Maybe not 30% for like the very technical, but I think like Songs of Everjade, honestly.
Yeah, Songs of Everjade is not a lot of programming.
I think generally your statement is pretty correct.
Yeah.
I think only if you go to the like very extremes of, oh, I'm making a game like a Zectronics game, yeah, sure, then programming is gonna be more than 30% probably. But I think, yeah, definitely a lot of you guys, you just only program really. And that's like, you can make a game once again, but you're not going to be able to make a game that looks good, that can sell well visually. There's way more than just programming that comes to play when making games. So, like, relatively cold take still, I think. I'll give it a B or a C tier.
Yeah, something like that. I can live with both.
Okay, this one goes back to Unity. This is one that you probably know more about. Unity should make the new input system the default one.
We use the new input system for everything.
But why is it not default?
There are some quirks, but I don't care about the quirks. I think it's better. I also think I had this discussion with someone like a while ago. I think one of the interns, I think Alexandra, where it's like the new input system works great, but there's like a higher barrier of entry.
How old is the new input system at this point?
4 or 5 years old. It's not new, but like what we mentioned is like the old input system is like, I just have an axis and I do like, this is a string and now I know what it is. New input system, you have to do a lot more work. It's a lot more flexible, you can do a lot more things more easily, but it's like a higher barrier of entry. Yeah. So Unity's mission is what they say is to democratize gaming, and 90% of people opening Unity never ship a game, nor do they know what they are doing. For them, the old input system is a lot better, I feel like.
Yeah, and then once you've gotten used to it and you're like, wow, this actually isn't great, then you'll probably start doing research and find out about the new input system. Yeah. I think it's also, just suddenly removing certain features that people are used to, that tutorials have been made for so much already. It's like not the best press. Maybe, I don't know,
But you already have like 4 or 5 years of backlog. And it's also stupid that it's still named new input system.
It is a very dumb name for a thing to do, but yeah. I would say it's not the hottest take. I think it's a pretty, you're right.
I would make it default, but I'm not the average Unity user. I think the conversation with Alexandra was about URP and
why is URP not the default one, for example?
But I think it's the same case, basically. Built-in render pipeline is a lot easier for people. URP gives you more flexibility. And I feel like it's the same with the input system. If I were Unity, I wouldn't make it their default just yet. Or they just have to make it so, the new input system is more easy to use in the first place. Ever thought about that one?
Okay, this one, Ryan, I'm sorry, this is the coldest take, basically, at least if you're on this YouTube channel. No spoilers. You don't need a game degree to go into the games industry. It's useful if you want to apply to a AAA company, but they would rather see you work in a portfolio than trust in a paper.
Video. Linked over there where he asked like 69 people or whatever.
Yeah, more than that, I think. So generally, we don't have game development degrees. If you really want a degree, get a computer science degree. If you want to do like more game programming, engine programming, don't.
And if you want to do art, do something art related.
Yeah. I've just realized we have been shitting on our interns, I guess, because we have 2 interns who are currently studying game development.
Yeah, but it's different in Belgium because it's cheap.
It's cheap here.
But if you have to go loan.
Yeah, if you have student loans, it's not worth it to get a game development degree. Yeah. There are better things to do. There are more safe things to do.
But if you're in a country like Belgium where it's very cheap to study and you're in one of the best schools in the world, like top 5 or something, I would probably do it as well.
But you don't need it.
You don't need it though.
So, I think pretty cold take, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not wrong.
I'm almost freezing, mate.
I think this is a D or an E tier.
Yeah, E. Yeah. I think it's just too cold.
Next up, okay, this is gonna be more of a hot take, especially for us, because we got the grinds and energy. Working on your project every day as a part-timer is overrated. Instead, be mindful of your mental state and don't push yourself too much. Take breaks if you feel like you're not enjoying the project anymore. A few weeks of not working on your game is not going to break your project.
And then you are the indie game developer that takes 7 years to finish their game. If you ever want to be profitable is not a word, is it? If you ever want to be profitable, yeah, then you probably need to change your mindset.
I think if you have that problem where you're so deep in the valley of despair, you don't want to continue working on your game, you have too big of a scope.
Yeah. And also, it depends on your goals. If it's just as a hobby, I want to make a game, do whatever you want, mate. If you ever want to make money,
yeah,
bad take.
It's like, we get this comment a lot of like, oh, what if you just do it for fun? Then this is not the channel for you to watch. Like, sorry, that's not the kind. You can learn from it, but know that the things we talk about always goes with the perspective of, at the end of the day, I like to eat. And I like to eat from selling the games that we make or from making these videos, whatever. So there is a different approach there. I think definitely for us, we have been on that work every single day grind set.
And we will keep doing it for a while.
We have been uploading like 2 videos every week on this channel for over a year at this point. Before I even like went full time, before I quit my job and everything, just because I'm like, this is how you make progress. If you don't do that, if you are like especially if it's like, okay, one day you can skip, I won't like kill you for it, but if you're gonna take multiple weeks off your project, it is gonna die, because you are not gonna wanna start again.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's, I mean, who would have thought that we have the same idea about how we should run a company? But
so it's a hot take, but we disagree with it. But I think if we rate it on being a hot take, I think it is pretty high.
I mean, it's a bad hot take though. I mean, it's for us a bad hot take. It depends on your perspective.
B tier.
Yeah, B tier, sure.
Oh, this is one. Scope creep can be a good thing.
You're one of the devs that's spent 7 years developing a game probably, and you are probably right that it can be a good thing if you don't care about eating, ever making money.
Okay, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Scope creep can be good if you have a game that is just missing something. If you are too basic of a game, like sometimes throughout development, you get that idea of, oh, this would be super awesome to add still, and it like completely transforms the game. There are going to be multiple kinds of games. I think like Cult of the Lamb started as like a completely different game, and then basically they scope creep themselves into the success they are today. Yeah, sure, there's gonna be some people who do it, like Stardew Valley scope creeped itself to success basically, but you're not that like...
Yeah, and also success is always relative to how much time you spend, and there's always, no matter what you say, it also is for us the case, an avenue of luck. Maybe it's more about the previous hot take even, but like if you grind yourself to death, you're more likely to have success than when you just rely on luck and make one big large game. Yeah. You kind of make success yourself with your work ethic, I believe, and you always need a smidge of luck. But if you throw 10 things at a wall, it's more likely that one will stick than if you just throw one thing.
Yeah, so scope creep, you get 10 different mechanics to put into your game and one of them will stick versus
no.
Isn't that what you just said?
No.
Okay.
I understand if your game is missing something, you should add it, but just your scope shouldn't be too big, because then you take too long to make a game and you cannot throw 10 things at the wall.
Yeah, I would rather than have that you have the discipline to be like, okay, this is scope creep. I put it on a list somewhere, I'm gonna finish my current game. If my current game already sells a bunch, I can add it as a feature. Yeah. If my current game doesn't sell as much, I'm gonna take that single feature and I'm gonna spin it into a new game.
Do we have a stat about how much of our viewer base has released the game?
Yeah, we do actually.
Okay, I want that stat. I'll come back to you guys.
Let me pull it up. I have the stats here. 20% has never touched an engine, just working on an idea. 50% has made prototypes but never shared them. 22% has made some itch.io games. 3% has released a game on Steam with no to low success, less than $1,000 in revenue. And then another 3% has released one or more successful games.
All right.
So 6% really has done the Steam release.
Yeah. If you don't know what that is like, you are probably not realistic about what your scope should be. I think we are very guilty of this, is that I think our vision, or at least how we envision that we should run our company in a way, changed a lot after releasing Forge Industry. Don't you agree?
Yeah, because that's the point. Before Forge Industry, there's a lot of hope. I see this with a lot of other starting developers. It's like,
you get beaten down, and once you're on the ground, you get beaten down. And once you're lying there already half dead, there is someone just coming in with their elbow and just smacking you in the face once again.
That's the comment that's like, oh, the game just looks bad. You should have made it look better and play better. And it's like...
There's also a stat where like, how many studios on Steam release a second game?
Not many, I think like 20% or something.
The reason for this is, if you spend 7 years of your life making a game,
that gets then like $2,000 in revenue,
and your people are like, this looks ugly, or this is not, this is buggy, this doesn't look polished, whatever, you are not going to survive that mentally. But if you make smaller games, you can get them through faster, you can go through those, trials, I would say they are, because you are just walking a field and there are like bombs and landmines filled, and you are just...
and you're being chased by a bear.
Yeah, you just have to get on the other side, and that's success over there. But to get there, you probably will fail a lot, is my opinion. So, scope creep, we got a bit sidetracked, I feel. Scope creep can be a good thing, I agree, but get your games out quick, man.
Yeah, I think it's an E tier take, or a D tier take.
Yeah, D tier. I wouldn't go E tier because there is, like you said, you played the devil's advocate, that's the only valid point, I feel.
Yeah, okay, D tier. This is just the most shit take I've ever heard in my entire life.
What a way to open.
The UI in a video game is extremely easy. As someone who has had multiple emails and hundreds of comments of people calling my UI clunky, despite having put so much time and effort into it, this is the worst take that I've read so far. UI is probably like, what was the thing, 30% of a game is programming? I think 20% of your game almost should be UI and UX. Having a good interface, having things make sense. It is not easy. It's going to be a lot of prototyping. I think you can even go as far as to like paper prototype your game, like draw out the UIs and like pretend clicking through things to see how many stops you have before you even put it in an engine. It's hard.
Yeah, it's easy to make a UI. Technically, it's hard to make a good UI. Make it clean, make it easy to use. Like when we played other people's games, there was some weird UI and
there was some bad UIs.
We are very lost in it, and that's what people probably experience with Forge Industry. It's a bad take.
This is an F tier take.
Yeah, I completely disagree.
Ooh, so this is from the developer of Lorne. It's the like Zelda-like kind of game. Right, okay. We've talked about it before, right? His advice is don't listen to the identical advice you get starting out. Everyone is just aping each other. Choose a direction and then make sure this is what you really want. I see so many people failing to even make their small games that the main issue, I believe, is not true commitment or no true commitment. You force yourself to do something that's not actually fun just to follow the guidelines and have that first game out there. So go ahead, kids, overscope your games and make your MMOs.
Bruh.
I don't think he's completely wrong.
I think he's completely wrong.
Okay.
Bruh, you're going to... You just said there are people that cannot finish their small games and you're like, just make your MMOs, it'll be fine. What?
I think...
Isn't that a peanut brain take? Come on.
No. So, the advantage here is that 90% of the people who do scope for that MMO first, including us, it is a very good...
It's not an MMO.
No, not an MMO, but it was going to be a Zelda Breath of the Wild-like game. You realize very quickly, once you get out of that idea phase, you learn very quickly, basically, because you're setting yourself up to fail, and failure is good in learning. So I think...
So you're saying it's a good thing because you will fail. Good job.
I think, honestly, the take has some good parts as well, like, you know, everyone is aping each other. This is something why you don't see me make videos about like dedicated top 10 ways to market your game, because we haven't done it well yet, and this is me talking shit, but there are other YouTubers, game devs, who make videos about like, oh, you need to go and do events, you need to go and reach out to influencers and whatever, but they have 200 wish lists and never released the game yet. And I think, yeah, there is a bit of some aping there in terms of, okay, everyone is kind of regurgitating the same. I try to like think that the stuff we say isn't that. Generally, the videos we make is just stuff that I have learned by falling on my face. But yeah, I think that's also why we get so much hate, because we don't always just be like, oh, Unity A tier or like Construct 3 F tier. It is not what most people say, so we have diverged. What am I saying? Making small games is still good, I think.
Yeah, but like I mentioned earlier, in my opinion, you're running through a landmine. Even with a bear behind you, sure. But with making a small game, it's a small landmine. Hey, you will probably still die, but at least you have a better chance of survival.
Or you just lose like a leg and you can limp to the finish and start working on that second game. I think definitely.
And also, if you just make your landmine, if you make an MMO, so damn big, you are bound to step on a landmine. If you want to reach the finish line, especially as your first game, you're going to get burned out, you will lose interest, you will not release your game.
Maybe your game will just be bad. Like, that's a problem I see as well. Like, you make an open world game, but it's like, well, it's very big, but there's nothing to do.
There's a reason Baldur's Gate takes 7 years of development or something like that from a team of 150 people. And if you think that you, on your own, can make something similar in quality, or even like a tenth of the size, in any time soon, I have some bad news for you, Paul.
I think, yeah, it can work if you're extremely built different, maybe, but I think 99% of our audience will not be able to push. Like 99% of our audience can't even release a small game to begin with. And yeah, sure, it's like, oh, maybe you're not as invested. I think if the only kind of game you want to make is open world MMORPGs or like MMO games,
go work for Larian or go for work for Blizzard and help on WoW, whatever.
I think you're watching the wrong channel then, because that's not gonna be the move. So
F tier.
No, this is not an F tier.
I really hate this take.
No, this is a D tier.
Bruh, this is like the worst advice so far.
No, that's the UI one is worse.
The UI one is more stupid. No, this is also very stupid. Goddamn, both are terrible.
I think this is a D or an E tier, but I think there is some truth to it.
I don't think there's any truth to it, but
good.
Put it in A tier, whatever. No, not
E tier.
Any tier is what I mean, not A tier.
Okay. Most indies fail because they learn tutorials instead of fundamentals.
I agree. A lot of people follow tutorials. You see a lot of things reused between tutorials.
My question then is, you learned game dev from Brekkies, right?
From Brekkies, but the difference is a lot of people just follow the tutorials and that's where it ends. But I also, from a very early age, had computer science. Like I learned C#.
Like you knew the programming fundamentals to begin with.
The thing is, tutorials are great to learn about something, but if you cannot apply it to different topics, they are so useless.
Yeah, the problem you have with a tutorial is you learn a feature in a vacuum. And often those tutorials are like, oh yeah, you just do everything in one class. That is like demo tutorial class, whatever, with like a demo scene. It doesn't scale. That's the problem, because you don't have those fundamentals of learning how do I actually make things interact with each other.
Like there are some exceptions. For example, I think CodeMonkey did some tutorials on dots and ECS. It's to get you to learn the basics, and that's very useful. There are people who watch that and only know how to move a character around now and don't understand the fundamentals behind it. And that's where I think a lot of people go wrong. If you go for a tutorial, like for example, I think CodeMonkey had one with monkeys running around with an ASR algorithm. If you go only because you want to learn an efficient way to do the ASR algorithm, you're using tutorials wrong. If you go there to learn about how dots works and you get the fundamentals from it and you can apply it on different things, then you're doing tutorials right. Shout out Mr. Monkey or something.
What would you rate this?
I think
this is an A.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in it.
Actually, it may even be an S tier.
But it's not so hot, is it?
I think it's pretty hot, actually. I think a lot of I think it could be an S tier, honestly. Learn fundamentals, don't learn tutorials.
Yeah, I can stand behind that statement. Sure, S tier. Good job, mate.
Let's do one more.
We've been going at it for an hour.
Yeah, we're almost an hour. Okay, let's end with one more take that I think is pretty stupid.
You are already trying to influence me.
Yeah, you're gonna hear me out. I wish after you gave up on your last game and before starting the new one, you asked your audience what game to make.
I've seen this one.
If you wish, you can include this question in the next video in a separate poll. If you don't do it because you're certain about the new game choice, at least ask the audience for opinions about your new game project.
Can I go first?
Yeah, you can go first. Go for it.
99% of the people watching
hate our games.
Have the size, their brain is the size of a peanut.
That's not what we're going. Thomas, never insult the audience.
All right.
Let's give it another go.
But you are not that viewer. I know you aren't, so you're the smart one, of course. No, but like for real, like a lot of people just say stupid things like add the X, add Y. Like if Sword Genesis had modding, it would be a great game. And
no. If Songs of Everjade was a stealth game, it would have been successful.
Make it 3D and it will be successful. You guys have very different opinions. Everyone has probably opinions that are valid in their use case, but it doesn't apply to us. And I agree that we can ask feedback on Guild Architect, but the ID should never come from you guys because first of all, we are making a game that we want to make, not your game. And I also feel like if this is truly what you think is the best, you either don't have a good vision of what you want your game to be, or you are afraid to fail, which, I mean, everyone is, I guess. But Songs of Everjade is a failure from a commercial standpoint, but it's still a decent game for what it is and what we wanted it to be. Now, to come back to the point, no.
We're not asking our because what would you rather do? This is a would you rather lose an arm or lose a leg, but instead it's would you rather know that it's at least 5 years of development work, but you are going to make like the next like an open world indie game, RPG kind of game. That's option 1. Or we make whatever the audience votes for, like you should make this game and there's a 1-year dev cycle.
90% of the people will now comment, make a train fountain girl dating sim, so...
I would make that. Yeah, actually, good idea, we're making that. But no, I think it's better to still make something, even if it's massively overscoped, like that MMO, but at least you believe in it. If we're gonna make the game that you're like, oh, you should make this, but we don't even have any investment in it, that is asking for trouble. That is not gonna happen then. We're not going to make a good game because we don't have the vision.
The hive mind isn't that smart. Like, you guys may individually be smart, but if all of you guys come together, it will be a train wreck of a game.
Hey, we like trains.
Oh, god damn it.
Train wreck, the game. Anyways, what are we rating this one?
Eh.
Is it an E?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, yeah, pretty not the best take.
Yeah, I disagree.
We still have so many more takes that we haven't been able to cover, unfortunately.
Maybe we do it in a future video. Maybe we do it in a live stream. Maybe we don't do it.
This was already a very long video, but leave us your thoughts down below as well. Remember, these are not art, like, don't hate us for the original takes, hate us for our own opinions, and if you do have hate, send it his way. But I hope this was a bit interesting. Stay tuned, because next week we'll be doing this with just our own hot takes, and we're gonna be trying defending them. We figured we should do this one first, so we can like test the waters a bit.
Yeah. First we say you guys are shit, and then we show that we are shit too.
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
So yeah, if you're looking for game dev related content, this is the place to be. We make 2 videos a week talking about the things we learn, talking about the progress on our games, and things like these hot takes where we just share our experiences being game dev. So if you're interested in that, head down below, go and subscribe, join our Discord server, and
see you guys in the next one, I guess.
Yeah, that's all I had to say. Bye.